What if I told you that the most important factor behind reliable, confident performance in the bedroom has very little to do with testosterone boosters, expensive supplements, or quick fixes you see online, and everything to do with something far more fundamental, your blood flow? I know that might sound overly simple at first, almost too basic to be true. But in clinical practice, simplicity is often where the real answers are found. Because the reality is this: you can have strong desire, normal hormone levels, and even good overall health on paper. But if your circulation isn't functioning properly, the outcome still suffers. My name is Dr. Jocelyn, and in my years working as a urologist, I've had hundreds of conversations with men who were convinced they needed complex solutions. Pills, boosters, therapies, anything that promised fast results. But when we actually broke things down, the root cause was usually much more straightforward than they expected. An erection, medically speaking, is not just a mental or hormonal event. It is a hydraulic process. Think of it like a high-pressure plumbing system inside the body. For everything to work properly, blood has to rush in quickly, efficiently, and under strong pressure. The vessels must expand, receive that flow, and hold it steady. But here's where problems begin. When those internal pipes become narrowed, stiff, or partially blocked, that pressure system fails. Blood simply cannot reach the destination with enough force. And the result is what many men experience: reduced firmness, inconsistency, or in some cases, no response at all. Now, let's make this even clearer. Inside your body, that pipe system is your arteries. And over time, these arteries can develop a buildup called plaque. This plaque is made up of cholesterol, fat deposits, and other circulating substances that slowly stick to the inner walls of your blood vessels. Over time, this buildup hardens. It narrows the passageway. And as the space becomes tighter, blood flow becomes more restricted. This doesn't just affect one area of the body. It is a whole system issue. But what many people don't realize is that different parts of the vascular system show signs at different times. And here is a very important point. The arteries supplying blood to the penis are some of the smallest arteries in the entire human body, much smaller than those supplying the heart or brain. That size difference matters a lot, because when plaque starts forming, it doesn't always cause immediate symptoms in larger arteries. But in smaller vessels, even a small amount of buildup can create a noticeable impact. Think of it like this. A small amount of debris in a massive highway might slow traffic slightly, but that same amount of debris in a narrow country road can completely block movement. Your penile arteries are that narrow road. So when men begin noticing changes in performance, it should not be dismissed as just a bedroom issue. Clinically, it can be an early indicator that something deeper is happening within the cardiovascular system. In many cases, it is one of the earliest warning signals the body provides. The encouraging part is this: early signs like this are not a dead end. They are a signal that change is still possible and very effective when addressed properly. And one of the most powerful ways to support this system is through daily nutrition. Let me walk you through 5 foods that can naturally support healthy blood flow and vascular function. We'll start with the first one: spinach and dark leafy greens. Spinach, kale, arugula, Swiss chard, these are all part of a group we often call dark leafy greens. And from a cardiovascular perspective, they are extremely valuable. The reason is something called dietary nitrates. When you consume these vegetables, your body converts these nitrates into a molecule known as nitric oxide. Now, nitric oxide plays a critical role in vascular health. You can think of it as a natural relaxation signal for your blood vessels. It tells the smooth muscle inside artery walls to relax and widen. When that happens, blood can flow more freely, more efficiently, and with less resistance. Without enough nitric oxide, those vessels tend to stay more constricted. And when they are constricted, achieving strong, consistent blood flow becomes more difficult. This is why leafy greens are so important. They directly support the chemical pathway responsible for vascular relaxation and circulation. Even something as simple as adding a large salad with spinach or arugula to your daily routine can support this process in a meaningful way. Now let's move to the second food, watermelon. Watermelon is often seen as just a refreshing summer fruit, but medically, it has a very interesting role in circulation. It contains a high concentration of an amino acid called L-citrulline. Once consumed, Citrulline is converted in the kidneys into another amino acid called L-arginine. And L-arginine is directly involved in the production of nitric oxide, the same molecule we just discussed. So essentially, watermelon provides the raw materials your body uses to produce more nitric oxide, supporting the same vascular relaxation process from a different biological pathway. It is a chain reaction. Citrulline, arginine, nitric oxide, improved blood flow. Even though the highest concentration is found in the rind, which most people don't eat, the red flesh still contains enough citrulline to offer real benefits. And because watermelon is also high in water content, it supports hydration, which is another key factor in maintaining healthy circulation and blood volume. So at this stage, you can already see a pattern forming. We are not talking about magic solutions. We are talking about biology, how the body naturally regulates blood flow, and how food can support that system. In the next part, we will continue with additional foods that strengthen vascular health even further, and also look at what common dietary habits quietly damage this entire system over time. Continuing from where we left off, let's move deeper into the foods that directly support your vascular system and help maintain strong, consistent blood flow throughout the body. The third food is dark chocolate. And I want to be very precise here because not all chocolate behaves the same way in the body. We are specifically talking about high-quality dark chocolate, ideally with a cacao content of 70% or higher. In fact, the higher the percentage, the more beneficial compounds it tends to contain. Now, from a medical perspective, dark chocolate is interesting because it contains a class of compounds called flavonoids. These are powerful antioxidants that have been widely studied for their effects on cardiovascular health. Their main role is not to act like a stimulant or a quick fix, but to protect the inner lining of your blood vessels. That lining is known as the endothelium. The endothelium is extremely important because it is responsible for producing and regulating nitric oxide, the same molecule we discussed earlier that helps relax and widen blood vessels. When the endothelium is healthy, it produces nitric oxide efficiently, and blood flow remains smooth and responsive. But when it is damaged, that production becomes less effective, and circulation begins to suffer. Damage to this lining usually happens gradually. Chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, poor diet, and lifestyle habits all contribute to this slow decline. This is where flavonoids play a protective role. They help reduce oxidative stress and support the function of the endothelial cells, essentially keeping the environment inside your arteries healthier and more stable. So instead of directly forcing changes in blood flow, dark chocolate works more like a protective support system for the vessels that control that flow. However, there is an important distinction here. Milk chocolate and heavily processed chocolate products do not provide the same benefit. In fact, they often contain high levels of sugar and unhealthy fats, which can counteract the positive effects. So if someone chooses to include chocolate in their diet for vascular support, the quality and cacao content are what truly matter. Now let's move to the fourth food, berries. When we talk about berries, we are referring to blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries. From a nutritional standpoint, these are some of the most powerful natural sources of antioxidants available in everyday foods. The key compounds responsible for their benefits are called anthocyanins. These are the pigments that give berries their rich red, blue, and purple colors. But beyond color, anthocyanins have a very important biological function. They help reduce inflammation throughout the body, including within the walls of your blood vessels. And this point is critical, because chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the silent drivers of arterial damage. It doesn't cause immediate symptoms, but over time it changes the structure and function of blood vessels. Inflammation makes the inner lining of arteries less smooth. It increases stickiness on the vessel walls, which makes it easier for plaque to accumulate and harder for blood to flow efficiently. You can think of it like corrosion forming inside a pipe. At first, it is barely noticeable, but over time, it narrows the pathway and disrupts normal flow. Anthocyanins help counter this process. They reduce inflammatory activity and support the integrity of the vessel walls, keeping them more flexible and less prone to buildup. This is why regular consumption of berries is associated with improved cardiovascular markers in many studies. Practically speaking, this can be as simple as adding a handful of mixed berries to your breakfast, blending them into a smoothie, or using them as a daily snack. Now let's continue to the fifth, food fatty fish. This group includes salmon, mackerel, sardines, and anchovies. These are some of the richest dietary sources of omega-3 fatty acids, which are essential for cardiovascular health. For a long time, dietary fat was misunderstood. Many people were told to avoid all fats, but modern research has made one thing very clear. Not all fats are harmful. In fact, some are absolutely necessary for proper body function. Omega-3 fatty acids fall into the category of healthy fats, and they play multiple roles in maintaining vascular health. First, they help reduce triglycerides, which are a type of fat in the blood that, when elevated, contributes to arterial stiffness and plaque formation. Second, they help lower LDL cholesterol, often referred to as bad cholesterol, which is a major building block of arterial plaque. At the same time, omega-3s can help increase HDL cholesterol, which is considered good cholesterol because it helps transport excess cholesterol away from the arteries and back to the liver for processing. From a functional standpoint, you can think of omega-3s as maintenance agents for your circulatory system. They help keep the internal environment cleaner, more balanced, and less prone to blockage. They also have anti-inflammatory effects, which further supports the health of the endothelial lining and overall vessel flexibility. When combined with the other foods we discussed, leafy greens, watermelon, dark chocolate, and berries, you begin to see a consistent pattern. All of these foods, in different ways, support either nitric oxide production, inflammation control, or vascular protection. But it is equally important to understand that nutrition alone does not exist in isolation. In the next part, we will shift focus to what actively damages this system. Because supporting blood flow is not only about adding the right foods, it is also about removing the ones that quietly disrupt your vascular health over time. Now that we've covered the foods that actively support circulation and vascular health, we need to look at the other side of the equation. Because in medicine, improvement is rarely about what you add alone. It is equally about what you remove. If the previous foods were supporting your blood flow system, then the next category is what gradually damages it when consumed regularly over time. Let's begin with the first major culprit, refined sugar and processed carbohydrates. This includes everyday items like soda, candies, white bread, pastries, packaged snacks, and many commercially baked goods. On the surface, these foods seem harmless because they are common and widely available. But inside the body, they create a very different response. When you consume refined sugar or highly processed carbs, your blood glucose levels rise rapidly. This sudden spike forces the body into an immediate regulatory response, which includes releasing insulin and triggering inflammatory pathways. Now, occasional exposure is not the issue. The concern arises when this pattern is repeated frequently. Over time, these repeated spikes in blood sugar begin to damage the inner lining of blood vessels. This is where the long-term problem develops. The endothelium, which we discussed earlier as the lining responsible for nitric oxide production, becomes stressed and less efficient under constant inflammatory pressure. As this continues, blood vessels begin to lose their smooth function. They become more rigid, less responsive, and more prone to dysfunction in circulation. This is not an overnight process. It is slow, progressive, and often silent until noticeable symptoms appear. Now let's move to the second category, trans fats and deep-fried foods. Trans fats are commonly found in certain margarine products, packaged baked goods, fast food items, and foods that are repeatedly fried in industrial oils. From a physiological standpoint, trans fats are particularly harmful because they negatively affect cholesterol balance. They increase LDL cholesterol, which contributes to plaque formation, while simultaneously reducing HDL cholesterol, which normally helps remove excess cholesterol from the bloodstream. This combination creates an environment where plaque buildup becomes more likely and more aggressive over time. In simple terms, trans fats interfere with the natural cleaning and regulation system of your arteries. They also contribute to inflammation within the vascular walls, further weakening the endothelium and reducing nitric oxide efficiency. Now let's move to the third category, ultra-processed foods. These are foods that come in packaging with long ingredient lists, often containing additives, preservatives, artificial flavors, and modified fats and sugars. Examples include instant meals, processed snacks, sugary cereals, and many ready-to-eat products. The issue with ultra-processed foods is not a single ingredient alone, but the combination of multiple artificial and refined components working together. They tend to be low in fiber, low in nutrients, and high in compounds that promote inflammation and metabolic stress. When consumed regularly, they disrupt normal vascular function in several ways. They increase inflammation, contribute to weight gain, affect insulin sensitivity, and indirectly damage the arterial lining. Over time, this creates a cumulative burden on the cardiovascular system. And there is another important factor people often overlook: lifestyle toxins. Excessive alcohol consumption and smoking are particularly harmful to blood vessels. Smoking introduces chemicals that directly damage the endothelium and reduce nitric oxide availability, while also causing vascular constriction. Alcohol, especially in excess, contributes to inflammation, disrupts lipid balance, and can negatively affect blood pressure regulation. When combined with poor dietary habits, these factors significantly accelerate vascular decline. Now, putting all of this together, the message becomes very clear. Your vascular health is not shaped by one single meal or one single habit. It is the result of repeated choices over time. Every meal either supports circulation or works against it. Every snack either contributes to clarity in your blood vessels or adds to the burden your system has to manage. This is why consistency matters more than perfection. A person who occasionally eats well but regularly consumes processed foods will not see the same results as someone who consistently supports their vascular system with the right choices. So the real takeaway is this: your diet is not just about nutrition, it is about function. It determines how efficiently your blood flows, how well your vessels respond, and how resilient your cardiovascular system remains over time. And that directly connects back to performance, energy, and overall health. In the final part, we will bring everything together and focus on how small daily changes can create long-term improvements in vascular health, confidence, and overall well-being. At this point, we've looked at both sides of the equation: the foods that support circulation and the ones that gradually damage it. Now, the question becomes, what does this actually mean in real life on a day-to-day basis? Because understanding the science is important, but what truly matters is how you apply it consistently in your routine. Let's bring everything back to the core principle we started with. Blood flow is central to performance, energy, and overall vascular health. And that means your daily habits are either strengthening your circulatory system or quietly weakening it over time. Now, one of the biggest mistakes I see is this idea of balance being misunderstood. Many people assume that if they eat a healthy meal once in a while, it can cancel out unhealthy patterns elsewhere. But biologically, that's not how vascular health works. Your arteries respond to patterns, not isolated moments. So if your diet repeatedly exposes your body to inflammation, sugar spikes, and processed fats, those effects accumulate even if you occasionally eat nutrient-rich foods. On the other hand, consistent intake of vascular-supporting foods gradually shifts your system in the opposite direction. It improves endothelial function, supports nitric oxide production, and helps maintain smoother blood flow. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Now, let's talk about how this connects to real physiological improvement. When you consistently support your blood vessels with foods like leafy greens, berries, fatty fish, watermelon, and dark chocolate, several things begin to happen over time. First, nitric oxide availability improves. That means your blood vessels can relax more effectively when needed. This directly supports smoother circulation. Second, inflammation levels begin to reduce. This protects the inner lining of your arteries from ongoing damage and slows down plaque development. Third, lipid balance improves. Healthy fats help regulate cholesterol levels, which reduces the progression of arterial narrowing. And fourth, the overall flexibility of your blood vessels improves. This is important because healthy arteries are not rigid tubes. They are dynamic structures that expand and contract based on demand. When all of these factors work together, the entire circulatory system becomes more efficient. Now, it's also important to address expectations. Many people expect immediate changes when they adjust their diet, but vascular remodeling is a gradual process. The body needs time to repair, rebalance, and adapt. In clinical terms, this is not a quick fix system. It is a progressive improvement system. That means small changes done consistently over weeks and months produce far more meaningful results than extreme changes done briefly. Another important point is awareness. As I mentioned earlier, the arteries in different parts of the body vary in size. Smaller vessels are often the first to show changes in circulation. This is why early signs in energy levels, endurance, and performance should never be ignored. They are often subtle indicators of a broader vascular trend. When addressed early, these changes are highly reversible through lifestyle and dietary adjustments. But when ignored for long periods, the system becomes more rigid and improvement takes longer. Now, let's bring this into a practical perspective. If someone were to simply start by adding more of the beneficial foods into their daily meals without overcomplicating things, they would already begin shifting their internal environment in a positive direction. A breakfast that includes berries, a lunch that includes leafy greens, a dinner that includes fatty fish a few times per week. Small additions like this build a strong foundation. At the same time, reducing refined sugar, fried foods, and ultra-processed items removes ongoing stress from the system. This combination, adding support while removing harm, is what creates real change. And this is where most people underestimate the process. They look for complicated solutions when the most effective strategy is actually behavioral consistency. Now, from a medical standpoint, this is also where long-term outcomes are determined. Cardiovascular health is not built in a single decision. It is built in hundreds of small decisions repeated over time. Each meal is essentially a signal to your body, either a signal of repair and support or a signal of stress and damage. And over time, those signals accumulate into your overall health status. So, if we step back and look at the bigger picture, the message becomes very clear. Your vascular system is highly responsive. It is not fixed. It is adaptable. That means improvement is always possible, regardless of age or starting point, as long as the underlying habits are addressed consistently. And this brings us back to the original idea of this entire discussion. Performance, especially in sensitive areas of health, is not isolated from the rest of the body. It is a reflection of overall vascular function. When circulation improves, multiple systems improve together. Energy improves, endurance improves, recovery improves, and yes, performance improves as well. So rather than focusing on isolated solutions, the real approach is to support the entire system from the inside out. In the final section, we will summarize everything into a clear, practical framework and bring the full message together so you can apply it directly in your daily life. Now, let's bring everything together and close this out in a way that is practical, clear, and directly usable in your daily life. Because if there is one key message from everything we've discussed, it is this. Your vascular system is the foundation behind far more than most people realize. It influences energy, endurance, recovery, and yes, intimate performance as well. But at its core, it is all about one central mechanism, blood flow. And blood flow is not random. It is shaped continuously by what you eat, how you live, and the habits you repeat every single day. So instead of thinking in extremes, the goal is to think in systems. Your body is a system that responds to two main inputs, support and stress. Support comes from foods that improve nitric oxide production, reduce inflammation, and protect the lining of your blood vessels. We discuss those in detail: leafy greens, watermelon, berries, fatty fish, and dark chocolate. Stress, on the other hand, comes from refined sugar, trans fats, ultra-processed foods, smoking, excessive alcohol, and consistently poor dietary patterns. The balance between these two determines how efficiently your circulatory system performs. Now, here's the important clinical reality. The body is not static. It is constantly adapting. That means improvement is always possible, even if someone feels like they are starting late or dealing with long-standing issues. The endothelium, which is the inner lining of your blood vessels, has the ability to recover and regain function when given the right environment. Nitric oxide pathways can improve. Inflammation can decrease. Circulation can become more efficient again. But this does not happen overnight. It happens through repetition and consistency. This is where most people misunderstand health improvement. They look for immediate transformation, when in reality, vascular health responds to steady input over time. Even small daily choices matter more than occasional large changes. For example, adding one serving of leafy greens daily is not dramatic, but over weeks and months, it consistently supports nitric oxide production. including berries, regularly helps reduce inflammation at a cellular level. Consuming fatty fish a few times per week improves lipid balance and supports arterial flexibility. These are not extreme interventions. They are sustainable biological supports. At the same time, reducing processed foods, sugar-heavy items, and unhealthy fats removes ongoing strain from your system. That reduction in stress allows the body to redirect energy toward repair and maintenance. And when support increases while stress decreases, the vascular system naturally begins to function more efficiently. Now, I want to be very clear about something important. This is not about perfection. It is about direction. You do not need a flawless diet to see improvement. You need a consistent shift in the right direction. Even a 20 to 30% improvement in dietary habits, maintained consistently, can produce meaningful changes in vascular function over time. And those changes are not just theoretical. They translate into how you feel day to day, your stamina, your confidence, your physical responsiveness, and your overall well-being. From a medical perspective, this is why early lifestyle intervention is always emphasized. Because the earlier you support your vascular system, the easier it is for your body to maintain healthy function long term. But even later, changes still matter. The body retains a significant capacity to adapt and improve when given the right inputs. So if we simplify everything into one framework, it looks like this. Support your arteries with nutrient-rich, anti-inflammatory foods that enhance nitric oxide and protect vascular lining. At the same time, reduce or limit foods and habits that damage that system over time. That is the foundation. Everything else is secondary. And if there's one final takeaway I want you to remember, it is this. Your circulatory system is not something you fix once. It is something you continuously maintain. Every meal is a choice. Every habit is a signal. Every day is an opportunity to move your body either toward better function or away from it. And the encouraging part is that your body responds when you start making better choices consistently. You do not need extreme measures. You need direction, patience, and repetition. Start simple. Start with one change, then build from there. Because over time, those small changes compound into significant improvements in how your body functions as a whole. That is how real, sustainable performance and health are built from the inside out through your vascular system, one decision at a time.